I still remember that day like it was yesterday. Standing in front of the bathroom mirror, my hand gently caressing my swollen belly. I was 7 months pregnant, and despite the morning sickness, backaches and sleepless nights, every kick from my baby filled me with joy. I had promised myself I would enjoy this stage, that each day was becoming harder, not because of the changes in my body, but because of Derek's attitude. When we first met, Derek Watson was everything I thought I wanted. Tall, muscular, with a smile that could light up a room. He was a rising star at the local gym, and I was the shy dental student who couldn't believe he'd noticed me. He looked at me with desire then, hugged me for no apparent reason, and filled me with kisses when he came home. But since my pregnancy started to show, everything changed. That night, I made an effort to look nice. I knew Derek would come home late from the gym, as usual. I put on a loose blue dress and pulled my hair up in a bun, trying to hide the exhaustion on my face. I applied some makeup to cover the dark circles under my eyes and left our bedroom hoping that this time he would look at me differently. When the apartment door opened, Derek walked in without even glancing my way. His muscular body still glistened with sweat, and his tight shirt marked every fiber of his biceps. He threw his keys on the table and collapsed on the couch with an expression of boredom. "How was your day?" I asked with a forced smile. Derek let out a snort while checking his phone. Same as always. The gym was packed, and I had to train several new girls. I felt a knot in my stomach. For weeks, Derek had been talking about those girls too frequently. He always mentioned how toned they were, how dedicated, how attractive they looked in workout clothes. "I'm glad things are going well for you," I said, trying to sound natural. Derek looked up for the first time, but instead of a loving look, his eyes reflected disdain. "And you? Did you spend all day at home again?" I felt the sting of humiliation in my chest. "I had appointments in the morning and afternoon, Derek. You know I'm still working at the clinic." He shrugged. "Oh, yeah. Sitting all day, right?" Anger and pain mixed in my throat, but I tried to stay calm. "Sit down for dinner. I prepared something special." Derek got up with annoyance and headed to the table. When he saw the dishes served, he let out a sarcastic laugh. "Seriously, Lauren? Pasta with cream? Do you know how many calories this has?" I pressed my lips together. "It's the recipe you used to like. We always ate it together before." He snorted. "Yes, before. But I can't afford to eat just anything. I don't want to end up like ... single quotes." His eyes scanned my body, and although he didn't finish the sentence, the contempt in his gaze was enough for me to understand. I slowly rose from the table, my hands trembling. "End up like what, Derek?" He smiled sideways, as if the answer was too obvious. "Lauren, look at yourself. You're ... big. I don't know. Like ... shapeless." The world collapsed in a second. My eyes filled with tears, but I wouldn't give him the satisfaction of seeing them fall. "I'm pregnant. We're expecting a child, Derek." He took a sip of water and shrugged. "I know. But that doesn't mean you have to let yourself go. Look at the girls at the gym. Some have had children and still look spectacular. You, on the other hand ... I don't know what happened to you." My breathing became erratic. "What happened to me?" I repeated quietly. Derek let out a cold laugh. "You used to be attractive, Lauren. Now you look like someone else." I felt like I couldn't breathe. "I can't believe you're saying this." He looked at me with a mocking grimace. "Tell me the truth. Who's going to want a woman like you after this pregnancy?" I felt the ground opening beneath my feet. "I'm your wife," I whispered, my voice breaking. Derek shrugged. "Yes, but things change. I felt my chest tighten. For years, I had loved Derek with all my soul. I had believed in him, in our relationship, in the promise of a family. And now, the man who once made me feel like the most special woman in the world was destroying me with every word. I took a deep breath, trying to calm the trembling of my body. I thought this was important to you, that we would form a family together. Derek laughed again, this time with disdain. Don't get me wrong, Lauren. Having a child is fine. But it doesn't mean you have to become ... this. I closed my eyes for a moment. I wanted to scream. I wanted to break something. But most of all, I wanted to disappear. When I opened them again, Derek was already standing, checking his phone once more. Tomorrow I have an event with some sponsors. Don't wait up for me. I felt the room getting smaller. An event? Yes. He smiled with self-sufficiency. I can't afford to miss opportunities. I swallowed hard. And me? Don't I matter? Derek looked at me for a few seconds. Lauren, you're not the woman I married anymore. That was the final stab. Without saying another word, I turned around and locked myself in our bedroom. I collapsed on the bed, feeling the weight of my emotions crushing me. I don't know how much time passed before Derek left the apartment. Only when the sound of the door closing filled the silence did I let the tears flow. I remained motionless in the bedroom, sitting on the edge of the bed, my gaze fixed on the floor. My fingers gripped the sheets tightly, as if that piece of fabric was the only thing keeping me upright. In my womb, my baby moved gently, as if trying to remind me that I wasn't alone. But I felt more alone than ever. The air in the apartment was impregnated with the echo of the argument we'd had hours before. Derek's cruel words still floated in my head, like sharp blades piercing my heart. I couldn't stop replaying the way he had looked at me, with contempt, with mockery, as if my pregnancy had turned me into a burden. Who's going to want a woman like you after this pregnancy? I closed my eyes tightly, holding back tears. It was incredible how a man I once loved could make me feel so insignificant. While I tried to find calm in my personal storm, Derek was driving his sports car at full speed through the city streets. The roar of the engine filled the air as he slid down the empty highway, with a smile of satisfaction on his face. The sensation of freedom, of power, was intoxicating. After leaving the apartment, he had gone directly to one of the most exclusive clubs in the city. Neon lights blinked, music pounded on the walls, and the air was charged with liquor and desire. Surrounded by young admirers, Derek felt invincible. He danced with a glass in his hand, receiving looks of desire and words of admiration. He leaned over one of the girls who had been flirting with him all night and whispered something in her ear, making her laugh. "You're a free man, aren't you?" she asked, playing with her hair. Derek smiled arrogantly, freer than ever. His friends cheered him on, toasting to him, to his success, to his perfect physique, to the life ahead of him. And at that moment, Derek believed he was right. But the early morning hours advanced and the euphoria began to fade. Shortly after 3 a.m, he decided it was time to leave. He said goodbye with a wave of his hand and left the club with the same confidence with which he had arrived. The cool night air hit his face when he left the establishment. He felt invincible. Alcohol still coursed through his blood, but he was conscious enough to believe he could control it. He got into his car, started the engine, and accelerated without looking back. The road was deserted, and the speed made him feel powerful. He looked at his reflection in the rearview mirror and smiled with sufficiency. He was young, strong, successful. Nothing and no one could stop him. Then, something appeared on the road. A dark shape, moving quickly. He had no time to react. He shouted a curse and turned the wheel violently. The car skidded with a deafening screech. The tires screeched against the asphalt, and the vehicle shot toward the undergrowth, crashing into something in the darkness. A crash shook the tranquility of the night. Then absolute silence. The first light of dawn illuminated the deserted road. In the distance, the first drivers began to transit the road, not noticing anything strange. But upon reaching a sharp curve, a destroyed car among the trees caught the attention of an early traveler. The police arrived shortly after. They examined the scene with serious expressions. Derek's car was in pieces, the windshield broken, the driver's door open. There were no traces of blood, but there were signs of what appeared to be a desperate struggle in the dense vegetation. The officers walked cautiously, observing the marks on the ground, the traces that someone or something had moved through the underbrush. But there were no signs of Derek, not his body, not his clothes, not a single clear clue as to what had really happened. Hours later, the media echoed the news. Personal trainer and social media star Derek Watson had mysteriously disappeared. Theories began to emerge. Some said he had been assaulted. Others, that he had fallen into a ravine, and his body would never be found. But the strongest hypothesis was the most terrifying of all. In that area, some locals claimed there were wild animals prowling in the darkness. With no trace of Derek, the investigation concluded that he had most likely been attacked. And over time, the case was forgotten. I stood in the cemetery, dressed in black, holding an umbrella with trembling hands. The rain fell on my face, but I didn't feel the cold. In front of me, a symbolic grave with the name Derek Watson was adorned with white flowers. Around me, murmurs of family and friends surrounded me. My mother, Margaret, held my arm tightly, whispering words of comfort that I couldn't hear. But inside me, emotions were a whirlwind impossible to control. Pain. Because even though Derek had humiliated me, I had once loved him. Rage. Because I never had the chance to confront him for all the damage he had done to me. Relief. Because I no longer had to live with the weight of his contempt. My baby moved in my womb, and I brought a hand to my abdomen, closing my eyes for a moment. From that day on, my life would change completely. Derek was dead, and with him, the last shadow of the humiliation I had carried for months had also died. But what I still didn't know was that this wasn't the end of the story. The air in the hospital room was charged with tension and expectation. With my skin bathed in sweat and tears marking furrows on my face, I gasped between tearing contractions. I had been pushing for hours, with my body on the edge of exhaustion, feeling how life made its way inside me with an uncontrollable force. The pain consumed me, tore me apart, burned me from within. I never imagined that bringing a life into the world would be like this. A battle between my body and destiny. A war where every scream was a cry of resistance. But there I was, fighting with every fiber of my being, clinging to the promise that at the end of the suffering, I would find the greatest reward of all. "Come on, Lauren, a little more," said the doctor with a firm but encouraging voice. "It's almost here." I gritted my teeth and looked at my mother, Margaret, who held my hand with an almost desperate strength. My father, Thomas, stayed close, his face tense, his eyes shining with a mixture of concern and pride. "You can do it, honey," whispered Margaret, her voice loaded with emotion. I closed my eyes and gathered all my strength. I pushed with one last heartbreaking scream, feeling how my body reached the limit of the bearable. Then, suddenly, the air filled with a sharp, strong, vibrant cry. Time seemed to stop. A shiver ran through my body as I heard that sound. That first breath of life that came from me. That was part of me. "It's a boy," announced the doctor with a radiant smile. A strong, healthy boy. Tears flowed from my eyes uncontrollably. I gasped, feeling how my chest overflowed with an emotion so pure, so immense that it almost hurt. When the nurse placed the baby on my chest, I felt that all the pain, all the suffering, all the anguish over Derek's death, all the abandonment and humiliation I had endured in recent months, dissolved in that instant. The little one was warm, with pink and moist skin, his little body trembling from the effort of his first cry. Noah ... I whispered, my voice broken with emotion. Your name is Noah. The baby continued crying for a moment, until his tiny body cuddled against the warmth of his mother, finding comfort in the beating of my heart. You did it, Lauren, whispered Margaret, caressing my hair tenderly. Thomas passed his hand over his face, unable to hide his emotion. Welcome, little one, he whispered with a trembling voice, looking at his grandson with infinite love. Visits from friends and family arrived at the hospital in the following days, bringing flowers, gifts, and hugs. The room filled with laughter, warm words, hope. I, though exhausted, smiled with a happiness I hadn't felt in a long time. There was no trace of Derek. No one asked about him. I felt that his absence wasn't a shadow, but a liberation. Hundreds of miles away, in a city where no one knew his name, Derek Watson looked at himself in a broken mirror in an old public bathroom. The reflection that returned the image wasn't that of a strong, successful and dominant man. It was that of a ghost. His face was marked by hunger and exhaustion. His cheeks looked more sunken, his eyes surrounded by purple circles, and the scar on his forehead was a constant reminder of the night his life changed forever. He wasn't the same man who used to walk with arrogance through luxurious gyms, surrounded by admirers, with tanned skin and marked muscles. That Derek was dead, because the night his car went off the road and his body was buried among the undergrowth, something inside him broke. He didn't exactly remember how he survived. He only had fragments of memories. The sharp pain in his limbs as he crawled among the bushes, his broken breath in the cold dawn air, the distant sound of something moving in the darkness of the forest. Then the awakening, his broken body, covered in wounds, lying on the floor of an abandoned cabin in some forgotten corner of the mountains. He didn't return home. He didn't call anyone. He didn't ask for help, because Derek Watson no longer existed. He wandered from one city to another, aimless, without identity. His skin tanned in the sun, his body weakened with hunger. His thoughts became a whirlwind of confusion and desperation, until he arrived at that gym. It wasn't a high-level center like the ones he used to frequent. It was a neighborhood gym, with old equipment, rusty weights, and a floor worn by the sweat of those who trained there every day. The men and women who trained there didn't do it out of vanity, but out of necessity. Because they wanted to be better, stronger, faster. Because sacrifice and discipline were their only way out. Derek observed in silence. He recognized in those young people the same need for transformation that he had once felt. It didn't take long for him to attract attention. Although his physique was no longer the same, his attitude remained intact. "Are you new around here?" asked a tall, muscular man who was drinking from a water bottle. Derek looked at him fixedly. "Yeah, just checking out the vibe." The man offered his hand with a friendly smile. "I'm Josh. I'm a trainer here. If you need anything, let me know." Derek shook his hand firmly. "Thanks, brother. My name is ... Jason." The lie came out with ease. He didn't feel guilty. He didn't feel strange. Derek Watson was dead, but Jason Miller had just been born. The alarm clock rang at 5 in the morning. I was already awake. I had spent the night awake, like so many other times, listening to Noah's breathing while my mind made calculations about the money I had, the bills I had to pay, and the hours of work that awaited me. I got up carefully, making sure not to wake my son, and headed to the kitchen. The aroma of coffee filled the small apartment, but not even caffeine could erase the exhaustion that had settled in my body. I was learning what it meant to be a single mother. Sleeping little, eating quickly, working to the limit, and still feeling that it was never enough. I sat at the table with the coffee cup between my hands and looked at it with a frown, as if expecting it to give me answers. How could I build a stable future for Noah when the world seemed determined to make it difficult at every step? Because yes, I had my parents. Margaret and Thomas helped me in every way they could. My mother spent the days with Noah while I worked, and my father supported me with money when the bills became unmanageable. But I knew I couldn't depend on them forever. I didn't want to be a burden. I rubbed my eyes and forced myself to get up. Another day was beginning, and I had to keep moving forward. The work days at the clinic were exhausting. I worked in a shared dental office with other dentists, trying to make a name for myself in the profession. I was still new, I still didn't have the stability I wanted, but at least I was moving forward. I spent hours leaning over patients, holding instruments with precision, explaining treatments with patience. Some looked at me with skepticism when noticing my youth, but when they saw my dedication, they returned to schedule appointments with me. Little by little, I was building my path. But while I tried to establish myself in my career, my heart was always somewhere else. Every so often, I would take out my phone and check the messages from my mother. Noah is fine, don't worry. He just went down for his nap. Eat in peace. I'm taking care of him. I would sigh and put the phone back in the pocket of my coat. While other dentists could focus solely on their profession, I had to divide myself in two. The dentist who worked tirelessly to achieve stability and the mother who felt she was missing valuable moments with her son. Sometimes, when I left the clinic late and arrived home with shoulders tense from tiredness, I would find Noah already asleep. That would devastate me. I would sit next to his crib, caress his hair gently, and whisper, "I'm doing this for you, my love." But sometimes I wondered if I was really achieving anything. The financial problems never completely disappeared. The income was unstable. Sometimes I had weeks full of appointments and others where I barely got patients. Money came in and went out too quickly, and there was always something more to pay for. There were nights when I would sit at the table with the calculator in my hand and my head about to burst. "Do you want me to help you, honey?" My father would ask, looking at me with concern. I would shake my head. "I can do it on my own, Dad." But the truth was, I couldn't always manage. Sometimes I had to accept help, even though I hated feeling dependent. And sometimes, in the darkest moments of the dawn, when Noah slept peacefully and the house was silent, I allowed myself to cry. Because even though Derek was never a good husband or a good man, his absence still weighed on me. Not because I missed him, but because he had escaped the responsibility that I now had to bear alone. While I faced motherhood in solitude, in another place, Derek was living a completely different story. He had been reborn with a new name, a new identity, a new life. He was no longer Derek Watson, the man who once had a family that he abandoned. Now he was Jason Miller, the fitness influencer whom thousands of young people followed with admiration. His body, which had always been his obsession, became his greatest tool. He uploaded videos showing his exercise routine, his strict diets, his motivational phrases about effort and discipline. He had buried his past so deeply that he didn't even allow his mind to travel to those memories. He didn't think about me. He didn't think about his son. In his mind, we no longer existed. But destiny doesn't forget. And sooner or later, the truth would catch up with him. Jason Miller, or as I knew him, Derek Watson, dropped the barbell with a roar of effort, his muscles tense and his skin bathed in sweat. The sleeveless shirt he wore adhered to his torso, highlighting every fiber, every line of definition sculpted to perfection. He remained motionless for a moment, breathing hard, feeling the blood pumping strongly through his veins. He looked at his reflection in the mirror, observing how the gym lights projected sharp shadows over his body. He was in his best shape, bigger, stronger, more imposing than ever. A physique that defied human limits. A statue of flesh and bone molded with extreme discipline. Around him, other athletes looked at him with respect, some with envy, others with genuine admiration. It was impossible to ignore him. He was the star of the gym, the reference, the man everyone wanted to be like. He ran a hand through his short hair and smiled with self-sufficiency. He loved that feeling of power, of absolute control over his body, and over the perception that others had of him. He took his phone from his pocket and unlocked the screen with a simple movement of his thumb. The notifications exploded. Thousands of comments, likes, and shares on his latest Instagram post. A video where he lifted 400 pounds in deadlift with almost unreal ease, accompanied by one of his motivational phrases that his followers repeated like a mantra. There is no success without sacrifice. He looked at the comments with satisfaction. You're a beast, brother. Give me your routine. I want that physique. Unstoppable as always, Jason. Total inspiration. He was a god to them. A symbol of determination, hard work, overcoming. And they adored him for it. Social media turned him into a star. The brands knew it. That's why offers kept coming non-stop. Since his social media account exploded, his life had completely changed. He no longer trained in cheap gyms, or had to worry about money. Now he rubbed shoulders with the fitness elite, was invited to exclusive events, and had contracts with the best supplement, sportswear and training equipment brands. Money flowed like never before. He stayed in 5-star hotels, traveled first class, and was received like a celebrity at every convention he attended. Women approached him with looks of admiration and desire, touching his arms, laughing flirtatiously when he directed a smile at them. Everything he had ever dreamed of was now his. But what no one knew, what he would never admit, was that behind all that perfection was a dependency that was slowly destroying him. It had all started as a simple reinforcement. In the fitness world, maintaining a high-level physique wasn't just about training hard and eating well. Everyone knew it, but no one said it out loud. The industry was built on a lie. Behind every perfect body that appeared on social networks, there was something more. And he knew it. When he decided to reinvent himself as Jason Miller, he knew he couldn't afford to fail. He knew that working hard wasn't enough. He needed something extra, something that would put him above the competition. At first, steroids were a calculated support. Small doses, well-structured cycles. Nothing out of the ordinary. Just enough to stay on top. And it worked. His body responded better than ever. His performance skyrocketed. His resistance increased. His physique became more impressive in record time. But the pressure increased with each new follower, with each contract he signed, with each event where he had to demonstrate that he was a model of discipline and sacrifice. He couldn't allow himself to go backward. Every time he noticed that his muscles weren't as marked as the day before, he increased the dose. Every time he felt fatigue, he resorted to a new combination. He needed to keep improving. Always bigger. Always stronger. That's how the need became a dependency. He started taking higher doses, combining different types of anabolic steroids to enhance the effects. Injections, pills, substances that promised to take his body to the next level. At first, everything seemed under control. But then, the warning signs began to appear. His mood changed drastically. He became irritable over anything. A poorly made comment, a failed repetition, a criticism on social media. Any small detail could unleash his fury. His explosions of anger were increasingly frequent, hitting the walls of his apartment when something didn't go as he wanted, yelling at his production team if a video didn't have the perfect lighting. Then came the insomnia. Hours and hours lying in his bed, unable to close his eyes. His mind working at full speed. His heart beating too fast. No matter how exhausted he was after training, he simply couldn't sleep. He spent the early morning hours checking his phone, watching his followers' comments, obsessing over his image. But the worst was the fatigue. At first, he thought it was just a bad day, but the bad days became constant. His body, which before felt invincible, now resisted. Lifting weights became a titanic effort. His joints hurt, his skin began to change, and although no one else noticed, he felt it. But he couldn't stop. Every time he thought about reducing the dose, fear paralyzed him. What would happen if he lost muscle mass? If his performance dropped? If his followers noticed something different in his physique? If brands stopped calling him? He couldn't allow himself that weakness. Because Jason Miller couldn't fail. So he kept going. The sacrifice was part of success, and pain was temporary. Only the weak gave up. One day, after an intense training session, he looked at himself in the locker room mirror. He was alone, with the gym almost empty. He was breathing with difficulty, his chest rising and falling irregularly. He approached the mirror and studied himself carefully. There he was, the man that millions admired. But something in his reflection disturbed him. He looked into his eyes, and he saw nothing, neither pride nor determination, just emptiness. A feeling of vertigo hit him in the stomach, as if something inside him was trying to warn him that he was on the edge of something he couldn't control. For a second, he wondered if all this was worth it, if he had gone too far, if he was really happy. But then, his phone vibrated on the bench next to him. A new offer, a new contract, a new recognition. He put the mask back on. He took a deep breath, recomposed himself, and picked up his phone. He had no time for doubts. He had no time for regrets. He was Jason Miller. And as long as the world kept adoring him, nothing else mattered. The sound of the dental drill resonated in the spacious clinic, mixing with the low conversations of patients in the waiting room, and the murmur of assistants coming and going from one office to another. In the center of it all, with my white coat perfectly adjusted and my hair pulled back in a neat bun, I smiled kindly at my patient while adjusting the lamp to better illuminate my work. Years had passed since those dark days when uncertainty consumed me. Now I was in my element. I was the owner of a prestigious dental clinic in Boston, a place where middle-class families and public figures alike came, trusting my experience to care for their smiles. Every corner of the clinic reflected my effort. It wasn't an ostentatious place, but it was elegant, with modern furniture, walls in neutral tones, and a welcoming environment that broke with the fear that many felt when visiting the dentist. I had worked tirelessly to build this empire with my own hands. From the days when I barely had time to sleep, because I was caring for Noah and studying at the same time, to the moment when I could finally open my own office and see my name on the entrance plaque. "All done, Mr. Garcia," I said with a smile, as I removed my gloves and mask. "Your treatment is complete." The man rose from the chair with an expression of relief and gratitude. "Dr. Davis,
I don't know how to thank you.
You're not only excellent at your work, but you also have incredible patience. My fear of dentists was enormous, but with you, I don't feel the same anymore. I smiled sincerely. I'm glad to hear that. That means I've done my job well. I accompanied the patient to the door, saying goodbye with natural cordiality. I turned to see the reception, where my assistant was reviewing the day's schedule. The clinic was full, with appointments scheduled for weeks ahead. I closed my eyes for an instant, allowing myself to breathe deeply. I had come so far, and the best part is that I hadn't done it alone, because at home, the biggest reason for my success was waiting for me. Noah. From a young age, Noah Davis had shown himself to be a special child. I had always known that my son had something different, something unique in the way he observed the world. He was curious, intelligent, and absorbed information like a sponge. At 5 years old, he was already asking questions that surprised his teachers, always wanting to know more, understand everything around him. But his talent wasn't limited just to academics. Noah had an artistic sensitivity that made him stand out. He drew with surprising precision for his age, with firm and detailed strokes that seemed impossible for such a young child. One day, while I was reviewing some documents at the dining table, Noah approached with a notebook in his hand. "Mom, I made this for you," he said in a shy voice, extending the sheet to me. I took the paper and felt a lump in my throat when I saw it. It was a drawing of the two of us. I was in my white coat with my hair pulled back, smiling while holding Noah's hand. In the background, there was a clinic with my name written in large, colorful letters. Davis Dental Clinic. "Do you like it?" he asked expectantly. I felt tears stinging my eyes, but I smiled widely. "It's the best gift anyone has ever given me." I hugged him tightly, feeling my son's love envelope me. As he grew, Noah continued to excel in school. His teachers spoke wonders of him. He was a brilliant student, with impeccable grades and an insatiable thirst for knowledge. "Lauren, Noah has a promising future," one of his teachers told me at a school meeting. "He's not only incredibly intelligent, but he also has an admirable work ethic." I smiled with pride. "He's always been very dedicated," I replied, feeling a special warmth in my chest. But no matter how many academic or artistic achievements he had, Noah always remained humble. "Mum, can I help you with something at the clinic?" he often asked, showing interest in my work. I would laugh and mess up his hair. "You're still too young for that. But who knows ... Maybe one day we'll work together." Noah smiled with enthusiasm, as if already planning that future in his mind. There was something Noah never asked about. His father. Since he had the use of reason, I had told him that his dad had died in an accident. I didn't give him too many details, and he never insisted. He grew up believing that his father simply hadn't been present because destiny had decided so. One day, when he was 10 years old, we were in the living room watching a movie when Noah, out of nowhere, said, "Mom, did you love my dad?" I remained silent for a moment, processing the question. "At some point, yes," I replied honestly. "But there are people who aren't meant to stay in our lives." Noah observed me with that analytical look he had inherited from me. "What was he like?" I took a deep breath. He was strong, very disciplined, someone who believed in the importance of effort. I didn't say more. I didn't tell him about his arrogance, his contempt, the way he humiliated me when I was pregnant. I didn't tell him about his selfishness or how fate had punished him. Noah nodded and then smiled. "I want to be strong too, but not in muscles. I want to be strong like you." The words completely disarmed me. I ruffled his hair tenderly and gave him a kiss on the forehead. "You're already strong, my love." Time continued its course, and Noah grew up in an environment full of love, surrounded by his mother's dedication and his grandparents' unconditional support. As the years passed, he became an admirable young man, with a noble character and an unbreakable determination. I looked at him and felt immense pride. All I had suffered, all the sleepless nights, every sacrifice I made, every battle I fought, had been worth it, because my son was my greatest success. And although I would never say it out loud, in my heart, I knew that without Derek, my life and Noah's had been much better. The gymnasium was packed with people that afternoon. The air was heavy, charged with the metallic smell of weights, the sweat of bodies straining to the limit, and the artificial aroma of energy drinks that everyone drank to stay active. The thunderous music hit the walls with a strong and constant rhythm, marking the tempo of each lift, each repetition, each drop of effort. Among all those people who trained with admiration in their eyes and determination in their gestures, Jason Miller, or rather, Derek Watson, moved like the owner of the place. He walked with the security of someone who knew they were being watched, admired, envied. His body was the result of years of work and sacrifice, or at least that's what he always said in his motivational videos. His skin, perfectly tanned, gleamed under the intense light of the gym, marking each muscle, each vein, each line of his torso chiseled like a sculpture. However, although no one else noticed, Jason knew that something wasn't right. For months, his body had not been responding as before. That almost inhuman power he felt when lifting extreme weights, that energy that made him train without rest, that resistance with which he could train for hours without his body complaining. All that seemed to be slipping away from him, like sand between his fingers. He ignored it, as he always did. He took his towel, wiped the sweat from his forehead, and headed towards the leg press machine. He was about to start his series when he felt his chest compress for an instant. It was a strange sensation, as if an invisible fist was squeezing his heart from within. It wasn't an intense pain, but enough to force him to stop for a moment and lean on the machine. He breathed deeply several times, waiting for it to disappear. He couldn't allow himself to be weak. He couldn't allow anyone to notice. Then, before anyone could realize, he forced himself to smile, placed himself under the machine, and began to push the weight with the same strength as always. But deep down, fear began to awaken within him. The symptoms had begun silently. First, it was fatigue, a fatigue different from what he knew, distinct from the normal fatigue after hard training. This was deeper, more persistent, an exhaustion that didn't disappear with hours of sleep or with the supplements he took every day. Then came the pains in the joints. Sometimes, when lifting weights, he felt stings in his elbows, in his knees, in his shoulders. Small discomforts at first, but over time they became more constant, more difficult to ignore. And then, the worst, the pain in his chest. The first time he felt it was one afternoon while training biceps. In the middle of a repetition, he felt a sudden stab in the left side of his torso. It only lasted a few seconds, but it was enough for him to stop for an instant and clench his teeth. It must be stress, he thought. Maybe I'm training too hard, he told himself. The most awaited event in the fitness world was taking place in an imposing convention center, with vibrant lights illuminating the main stage, and a multitude of eager attendees to see their idols in action. Supplement, sportswear, and training equipment brands had set up their stands, exhibiting products that promised to transform bodies and strengthen wills. The best influencers in the sector were there, surrounded by followers, cameras, and flashes that immortalized each moment. For Jason, this event wasn't just another presentation. It was his opportunity to show the world that he was still the same as always, that he remained the absolute reference in fitness. the unstoppable man that everyone admired. He had spent weeks preparing his speech. He rehearsed it in front of the mirror, perfecting each pause, each gesture. His image on social media had been carefully curated for this moment. Each photo, each story, each video conveyed the same idea. Jason Miller is still the king. But the truth was different. Fatigue was devouring him from within. The event organizers received him with enthusiasm. When he arrived, "Jason, brother, it's an honor to have you here." Jason smiled with his usual charisma, ignoring the stab of pain he felt in his back as he got out of the car. "The honor is mine," he replied with a firm voice. A team of assistants accompanied him to the conference area. He walked through the hallways crowded with fans and greeted several colleagues from the fitness world. Everyone looked at him with respect, with admiration. They knew he wasn't like the others. He wasn't just an influencer. He was Jason Miller. And as much as his body screamed otherwise, he had to act like it. When he took the stage, the auditorium erupted in applause. Hundreds of people cheered him. Some chanted his name. Others raised their phones to record him live. The lights were intense. The heat of the stage burned his skin. He took the microphone with confidence. "Success is not for the weak," he said with a firm voice. "It's for those who strive every day, for those who understand that sacrifice is the price of greatness." The audience responded with more applause. Jason smiled. He felt good. He felt invincible. But then, he felt it. A sudden dizziness hit him. It was a barely perceptible instant, but enough to make his vision blur for a second. He blinked quickly, trying to regain clarity. He continued speaking, pretending everything was fine. The problem with many is that they look for shortcuts. That true discipline ... true ... single quotes. His voice cut off. A cold sweat ran down his back. The microphone trembled slightly in his hand. The dizziness returned with more intensity. The stage seemed to tilt beneath his feet. For a moment, the entire auditorium faded into a distant noise. And before he could do anything to prevent it, his body stopped responding. The last image he saw was the illuminated ceiling of the auditorium, spinning over his head before his legs failed completely, and everything turned black. When he woke up, the voices around him were confused, distant. The white ceiling of the emergency room greeted him with an intense light that made him squint. He felt a dull pain in his head, an unbearable weight in his chest. He tried to move, but his body felt strange, as if it didn't belong to him. "Easy, Mr. Miller," said a male voice. A doctor. He was observing him with a mixture of seriousness and caution. "You've suffered a collapse." Jason closed his eyes for an instant. No, it couldn't be. He couldn't have collapsed in public. It had to have been a confusion, a drop in blood pressure, something easy to explain. "I'm fine," he murmured, trying to sit up. But as soon as he tried to move, a dizziness made him stop. The doctor shook his head. "No, you're not fine. We need to do more tests." Jason felt his throat close. This couldn't be happening. He couldn't be weak. He had to get out of there. "I need my phone," he said with an urgent tone. The doctor looked at him seriously. "What you need is to rest. Single quotes." Jason ignored his words. The only thing that mattered to him at that moment was what was happening outside. His fall had been live. Thousands of people had seen him faint on stage. His image, his reputation, his career. Everything was at stake. And when he finally managed to get his phone, he confirmed it. Social media was exploding. What happened to Jason Miller? He fainted during a conference. Does anyone know if he's okay? Something's not right with him. He's been looking weird lately. Excess anabolics? Don't tell me the fitness king is failing ... Single quotes, each post, each comment, each speculation pierced his pride like knives. He felt a knot in his stomach. For the first time in his life, the world wasn't seeing him as an idol. They were seeing him as someone vulnerable. And that, more than his own illness, was what truly terrified him. The sky was covered with grey clouds when Jason left the clinic. He walked aimlessly down the sidewalk, feeling his legs barely supporting him. His chest burned, not only because of the illness consuming him, but because of the devastating certainty that there was nothing more to do. He had lost everything. Each step he took felt heavier. Traffic roared around him. People passed by his side without even looking at him, as if he were invisible, as if he had never existed. The world continued turning, relentless, without stopping even a single second for his misfortune. It was as if he were already dead, although his body still breathed. The weight of his failure clung to his back like an inescapable shadow. He had tried to flee from the past, had pretended to be someone new, had built an empire based on the image of an invincible man. And now there was nothing left. His car was parked a few meters away, but he didn't have the strength to enter. Inside him, something broke. His hands clung to his abdomen, as if they could stop the pain within. A pain that had nothing to do with his illness, but with the anguish of knowing that the world would continue without him. He leaned against a light pole and closed his eyes. I was right. The man I had known was dead. Only this distorted reflection remained, an empty body, a soul corroded by selfishness. No one was going to save him. No one was going to mourn him. No one was going to remember his name with love. Months passed, and Jason became a ghost of himself. The days passed slowly, monotonous, without purpose. His muscles, which had once been his greatest pride, withered like dry leaves. His skin lost its perfect tan. His gaze dimmed, his movements became clumsy. The strength that had defined him vanished, replaced by tiredness and illness. Social media, where he had once reigned, forgot him with the same speed with which they had elevated him. His sponsors cancelled contracts. His followers stopped asking about him. His friends from the fitness world disappeared. Jason had gone from being an idol to a blurry memory. The world moved on, but he didn't. Day after day, the illness wore him down more. The dialysis sessions left him exhausted. The dizziness was constant. His body increasingly weaker. He knew there was no hope. The waiting list for a transplant was endless. And he had no one to fight for him. No one to accompany him. No one to love him. Until one morning he simply didn't wake up. His body was found in his apartment, alone, in the same bed where he had looked in the mirror so many times and convinced himself that he was superior to everyone. There were no goodbyes. There were no tears. There were no flowers. The man who once believed that the world revolved around him was extinguished without the world even noticing. Miles away, my life with Noah flourished like a strong tree, rooted in love and determination. With my hair pulled back and an impeccable white coat, I walked through the corridors of my clinic, reviewing cases, greeting patients, making sure everything was in order. My effort had borne fruit. My clinic was not only recognized, but it had grown beyond what I had ever imagined. And the best of all is that I was no longer alone. Noah, with his confident bearing and warm smile, accompanied me at every step. He had graduated as a dentist, and now was the manager of the clinic, ensuring that everything worked perfectly. I had taught him what dedication, discipline, and love for work were. Now, together, we carried forward a dream that had been born in the darkest moments of my life. He never knew the truth about his father. He never asked about him. And he never needed him, because he already had everything a man could desire. A mother who loved him unconditionally. a clear purpose, a path forged with effort and honesty. I looked at him from my office as he spoke with a patient. He was a good man, a noble man with values, with a bright future. Everything I had lived through had been worth it. Every tear, every battle, every night of loneliness. Because now I knew with certainty that I had made the right decision. Life had taken many things from me, but it had given me something even greater. The opportunity to be happy without the shadows of the past. And with a smile on my face, I knew that was my true triumph. If this story touched your heart, leave us a like and subscribe for more impactful stories. What do you think of my decision? Tell me in the comments. Share this video with someone who needs to hear this story, and don't miss the next one.